California's Great America dates back to 1976, originally built by Marriott, along with its sister park in Gurnee, Illinois. The city of Santa Clara bought the park from Marriott in 1985, who brought in the Kings Entertainment Company to operate the park for them. And they had a pretty good track record, already in charge of Kings Island, Kings Dominion, Canada's Wonderland, and Carowinds. And in 1989, they acquired the park from the city. It was then part of the deal to sell all the Kings Entertainment parks to Paramount Communications in 1992, before changing hands one more time in 2006, when Paramount sold its parks to Cedar Fair. Despite being under the same ownership now for 15 years, it hasn't been all fun and games for Great America, as the park was nearly sold and scrapped in 2011, when the 49ers were moving in next door. But through it all, the park remains 45 years later, and they've had a total of 15 roller coasters operate at the park throughout its lifetime. And today, I want to rank them up. These are all the coasters that ever operated at California's Great America, from worst to first. Just a note, I have only been to this park twice, so I have not ridden all the coasters on this list. That being said, I think I can still accurately rank them based on my experience with these coasters once they've been moved to other parks, or from clones of these past coasters, or from coasters that are very similar. Number 15. Lucy's Krabby Cabbies, an E&F Miler family coaster, built in 1999, still operating today. There's not a whole lot to this one. I got to ride this in 2018 when we took Sophie to the park, and it's just as good as any other E&F Miler family coaster. These usually have good bunny hills, and this is no exception. It's got a nice setting there, in a little creek, surrounded by good landscaping, and it's a perfect first coaster for kids before moving on to the next level. This opened up as Taxi Jam under Paramount's ownership, and thanks to Cedar Fair, it adopted the Peanuts theme in 2015. Number 14. Gulf Coaster, an Alan Herschel Little Dipper, built in 1976, closed in 1980. Well before Taxi Jam, this was the park's kiddie coaster, opening with the park. I rode the same model at Little America in Wisconsin, a very simple oval layout with some bunny hills, and it's built for the smallest of kids. This was taken out in 1980 and apparently was scrapped, since there is no relocation information. Number 13. Vortex, a B&M stand-up coaster, built in 1991, renovated after 2016. Some people may consider Vortex a coaster that's still in operation, but I think it's different enough now to consider it a separate coaster. This was one of B&M's very early coasters, back when they were just getting their feet wet on their own, away from Giovanola and Intamin where they came from. And their first model was the small-scale stand-up coaster. The first one was built in 1990, and that went to the other Great America in Illinois. And then Santa Clara got the second in 1991. I never got to ride this as Vortex, but I have ridden another stand-up coaster with nearly identical stats, Vortex at Carowinds, which debuted the next year, and I was not a fan. It was uncomfortable, short, and not very thrilling. And it's not surprising the park decided to change it up, to make it more appealing to guests. Number 12. Grizzly, a wooden coaster built in 1986, still operating today. Let's start with the good things about Grizzly. It's smooth. It has a pretty decent first drop. After that, it's just about the most dull, large-scale coaster you could imagine. It's not straight track, but it might as well be. The drops are so shallow, and the turns are so drawn out. There's really no thrill factor here. But it's a fun coaster for beginners or kids, even though that's not who it was designed for. This was the park's only wooden coaster for 27 years, and now that they have a better one, maybe it's time to put down the Grizzly and give that big plot of land something fresh. Number 11. Woodstock Express, an Intamin family coaster built in 1987, still operating today. This is such a bizarre coaster, such a weird design for a coaster that's made for kids, coming off the ground pretty far, and sporting a pretty decent sized drop. The coaster doesn't really make sense. But in terms of an intermediate coaster between Lucy's Krabby Cabbies and Grizzly, it serves as a pretty good bridge, and I got to ride this once in 2018. It started its life in 1984 at a park called Hanna-Barbera Land in Spring, Texas, where it went by the name of Scooby-Doo. It went through several names over its ownership changes over the years, starting as Blue Streak, then Green Slime Mine Car, then Runaway Raptor, before being rethemed to the Peanuts in 2010, when Cedar Fair made a major push across all these former Paramount parks to get Snoopy into its kids' areas. Number 10. Patriot, a B&M floorless, renovated in 2017, still operating today. This is what became of Vortex, the B&M stand-up to floorless conversion that we've also seen with Rougarou and Firebird, as parks try to breathe new life into old rides as the stand-up model becomes less and less popular. I've ridden Patriot a few times, and I've enjoyed my rides on it. It's still small, not super thrilling, only 2 inversions, but it has a nice setting in the middle of the park, but still kind of secluded, and it runs very smooth compared to some other B&Ms, where the rattle will scramble your brain. Maybe that's because it doesn't run as fast, with a top speed of just 45 miles per hour, or the fact that it was just converted to a floorless, and everything still fits like it should. But between the smooth track and the comfortable new trains, I think Patriot is an enjoyable ride. Number 9. Psycho Mouse, an Aero Wild Mouse, built in 2001, still operating today. A few companies tried their hand at the Wild Mouse, but I think Aero did it best. Mock Rides kinda sucks at it. Maurer is a little better, but I actually have fun on Psycho Mouse. The line moves horribly slow, so I've only ridden this once, but it was a memorable ride, especially in the second half, starting out with that downward turn into the first big drop, followed by a bunch of bunny hills. It's still a Wild Mouse, so don't get too excited, but if you've never tried an Aero Mouse, you may be in for a pleasant surprise. Number 8. Invertigo, a Vekoma Invertigo, built in 1998, removed in 2010. I missed this coaster when it was at Great America, and then it was moved to Dorney Park as Stinger, where I missed it again. I went to Dorney in 2008 and 2018, and during those 10 years, Stinger came and went. But I have ridden Invertigo at Kings Island, so I'll base my ranking on that experience. If you hate boomerangs, I suggest you try an inverted one. I think these are way better. They're downright enjoyable. And the cool thing about the inverted model is that you can ride forward or backward, since the rows face each other. The ride obviously goes forward and backward naturally, but you know what I mean. I think the inverted model of the boomerang is smoother and more forceful, feeling those positive G's pulling on your feet through those inversions. This was situated right in the middle of the park, and its removal made for a perfect plot for Railblazer, which we'll see later on. Number 7. Whizzer, a Schwarzkopf speed racer, built in 1976, closed in 1988. This was one of the park's big coasters when it opened, then known as Willard's Whizzer, named after the park's owner, Willard Marriott. This was taken out when I was 1 year old, but luckily, Marriott built the same exact thing in Illinois at the same time, and despite nearly biting the dust after the 2002 season, it still operates to this day, and I've ridden it a few times. First off, this has a 36-inch height limit, and that's insane, because that's usually reserved for the kiddie coasters. And this is no kiddie coaster, with a 64-foot drop and a top speed of 42 miles per hour. Granted, that drop is at the most gradual angle imaginable, coming off that cool electric spiral lift that Schwarzkopf made popular in the 70s and 80s. Speed Racer is a good name for this model, since all of its elements are long and drawn out. Shallow drops, wide turns, and it's not extreme at all, but it's still a lot of fun. And it's a unique type of coaster that the park could still use, though the footprint may be a little big to justify a ride like this in a landlocked park. Number 6. Demon, an aerodynamics looping coaster, opened in 1976, still operating today. Here's another park original, but it looked a little different back then compared to now. It was called Turn of the Century, and it featured a couple of hills before it's turned into the double corkscrew finale. In 1980, the hills were replaced with vertical loops, doubling its number of inversions, and getting a new theme, the Demon. It's still a very simple ride, but it has a lot going for it. I love the straight drop. The back-to-back loops are intense, and the best part of the ride is the dive into the rockwork, straight into the double corkscrew. It's a little outdated at this point, but it's still a decently smooth and enjoyable ride. Number 5. Grease Lightning, a Schwarzkopf shuttle loop, opened in 1977, closed in 2002. This spent most of its life as Tidal Wave, donning that name for the first 22 years, before changing for the final 4 years. I passed by Great America in 2001, but I didn't visit, and it's too bad because I could have ridden this. I'm going to use my experience with Montezuma's Revenge at Knott's Berry Farm to rank this up. Nearly identical stat-wise, but the main difference being the weight drop on Grease Lightning and the flywheel on Montezuma's Revenge. Different methods of launching, but achieving the same goal. These launches are kinda crude, but they have some power behind them, more so than some of these magnetic launches. And those big circular loops are G-force machines, and you get to fly through them twice, once forward and once backward. When this opened in 1977, vertical loops were still new on the scene, with Revolution opening the year prior, so this was a big deal at the time. But like all the other shuttle loops other than Montezuma, this one met its demise. It was shipped over to Six Flags Marine World after its removal, but it was never rebuilt. Number 4. Stealth, a Vekoma Flying Dutchman, opened in 2000, removed in 2003. Paramount took a chance on this prototype in 2000. At the exact same time they were building Son of Beast at Kings Island, and unfortunately, their gambles don't always pay off. But we, as enthusiasts, can appreciate their effort. This flying coaster would lay the rider down in the station, and then go up the lift hill on their backs before flipping them over and traversing the compact course. This would switch off between riding on your back and riding on your stomach, and included a vertical loop, which is one of the most bizarre inversions ever, going through it in that position. Stealth was a maintenance headache, and after just 4 seasons, it was taken out so they could add a water park. But this wasn't the end of Stealth. It was relocated to another Paramount park, Carowinds, and it was given a Star Trek theme. Borg Assimilator. When Cedar Fair took over, it was renamed Nighthawk, and that remains today. This has a bad reputation, but I had a pretty decent ride on it. I love the Flying Dutchman model, and it's nice that the original still rides on today, even if its days seem to be numbered. Number 3. Flight Deck, a B&M inverted coaster, opened in 1993, still operating today. Great America was on the B&M train early on, getting the second stand-up and the second invert, this one being the first Paramount edition after acquiring the park, and sporting the Top Gun theme all the way up until the Cedar Fair sale, where it kept the fighter jet theme, but going with a generic name. It's a very short ride, starting with a 91-foot drop into a loop, an intense upward helix, a zero-G roll, and then it wanders over the station to the grand finale, the corkscrew and the helix over the lake. For as short as it is, the elements are great, it's crazy intense, and that finale is iconic. You don't hear many people have bad things to say about Flight Deck. It's also funny that this Great America was so into B&M early on, and the only other park that seemed that invested was the other Great America in Illinois, getting the first B&M in Iron Wolf, and the first invert in Batman the Ride. By now, Six Flags owned that park, so the Great Americas were completely separated, despite their shared affinity for B&M in the very early 90s. Number 2. Railblazer, an RMC Raptor, opened in 2018, still operating today. Great America doesn't have a lot of space to work with, and they have nowhere to expand, so compact throw rides are good. The invertical plot in the middle of the park had been cleared out since 2011, and they finally found the perfect thing to replace it with, the RMC Raptor model. This opened a month after Wonder Woman at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, so it wasn't the first, but it was close. These single rail coasters are quick and nimble, whippy and full of airtime, sporting some of the best pacing you'll ever see as it screams through its 30-second course. I love these Raptors, but the shoulder restraints and the short ride time knocks them a little bit down for me, and that's the main reason it couldn't grab the top spot on this list. Number 1. Gold Striker, a GCI wooden coaster, opened in 2013, still operating today. I heard all the hype about Gold Striker when I went to Great America in 2018, and it lived up to it. Sometimes GCI can be hit or miss, and Gold Striker is a home run. GCI is at its best when it has that classic out-of-control feeling, while still mixing in pops of airtime. Gold Striker does all of this perfectly, and offers a long ride as it winds around its footprint. My only complaint is the roughness, and that seems like it could be fixed with a little TLC, and maybe some retracking in the high-stress areas. And I thought it was too bad that I felt it shake me around in 2021 just as bad as it did in 2018. Of all the GCIs that I've ridden, only Mystic Timbers is ranked higher. Gold Striker is just that good, and when comparing it to Railblazer, this barely edges it out. That's a wrap on every coaster that's ever operated at California's Great America. Let me know what you think about my ranking, and what you may have switched around. Sound off your thoughts in the comments below. I'd say, for the most part, the list is on the weak side, and it's not until number 5 that you really start to see the quality ramp up. But those top 3 are still at the park, and those are must-rides every time you go. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like. That's the best way to show your support for the channel. And if you're new here, and love ranking coasters, be sure to sub and hit the bell for more content just like this. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, where you can chat with other fans of the channel, as well as my second channel, where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.